I was playing with my flat lead pencil.
Your flat lead pencil.
This one only has a really hard lead in it right now, so it draws very lightly. But so I've been playing with it. But can you see it?
Yeah, now I can see. Oh, it's flat lead.
It's actually a flat lead, but it has a very thin profile.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're back. May is a very busy month for us.
It is a very busy
April
month.
is too.
It actually draws so light that the sketch doesn't show up on the on this video.
On that video?
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be a very I'm like running in and out.
Huh? Running in and out of what?
I was zooming in and out for people. I don't think they can see anything.
Can
I can't
they?
see it. No. Barely. People are joining.
I'll
Do
switch to it.
demons sharpen your pencils?
Sometimes.
How do I get better at capturing the features of a person?
Of a person?
Yeah.
That's about heightening your observational level. I mean, that's capturing somebody's features is it's the same thing you do to get better at anything else. You have to specifically target the kinds of things you look for in a personality. I mean, which is why caricature artists do so well at it, because they get really good at spotting people's features and then stylizing them which is why it's funny, I found a lot of really great painters at one point or another did caricature work. There's I think a Chinese painter named Mian Situ who I think, if I remember reading correctly, started his career kind of working on a boardwalk, doing nothing but caricatures, like 8 to 10 hours a day. But he's a brilliant painter. I say Mian Situ and I say he. I don't know if that is a masculine or feminine name. See, now it shows up a little bit. Okay.
Yes, someone said they can only see your sexy hand.
Oh, well, that's... I'm unsure how to proceed. No, but that's very kind. Saying my hand is... I think I have... my hands are good actors. Because I use them in a lot of my pieces. My hands are much better actors than I am.
You're pretty good. You use you in some pieces too.
Occasionally. I have no idea
You
what...
just had a cake.
Oh, you're not talking to me.
Thank you.
But it's summertime, so the kids always have this excessive amount of energy at this time of the night.
Yes, we're already into 9 p.m. dinners.
Yeah.
Normally we eat at 6 or something.
I know.
And we're already up to 9 p.m. dinners, and it took us like 3 days. Your art is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Daniel
Ragmer says.
It's very kind. I have literally no clue what it is that I'm drawing at this moment, other than it's just a bunch of shapes.
That's okay.
Sometimes I feel like it's sort of like this spontaneous evolution. Like if you were to throw a bunch of animal parts together in a vat and something were to actually be able to make itself out of those things and jump out.
If I put my foot up here, shouldn't do that, right?
What? As long as it's not on the lever, it's not going to hurt it.
Mm-hmm. Do you still do cons? You do about 3 conventions a year.
Yeah. We'll be at Dragon Con this year.
Right. We did Monsterpalooza in April. We'll be at Dragon Con, and then the week after Dragon Con, we'll be at Lightbox Expo.
Should be interesting.
Yes. Especially since I have to split inventory and booths. Because I have to ship it out to Lightbox.
Oh, from where?
From here.
Oh, yeah. So what do you mean split inventory? Or did you mean ship inventory? You said split inventory.
I have to split it because some of it will have to be shipped to Lightbox before Dragon Con even happens.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because it takes a week to get there. And then we'll go to Dragon Con and I'll come back.
There,
I'll shove some more into the...
There are times when I sit down and I intentionally work with specific line qualities and direction. But there are other times when I try to just I let myself go kind of random, and realizing that I'm gonna erase, a lot of what I'm doing until I find a shape that I like.
Yeah, because someone said they just tuned in, and what are you sketching up?
Yeah,
You
again,
don't know.
I have no idea.
Have you ever tried the Korean Dash water soluble graphite pencils?
I have some water-soluble graphite. I don't usually play with it very much. I don't know. I like it to stay put, and sometimes when I want to add something to it, like if I want to use like gouache on graphite, I feel like the water-soluble stuff starts to move around in a way that I don't want it to.
Do not.
But I have it, and I haven't played with it a lot in and of itself yet. I might get her. I had some. What was it? Julie was using some water soluble graphite, or was it Noni at Glasburn?
Julie, she didn't like it.
Yeah, and it's just it's a little.
It's when you got the powdered graphite.
It has a binder in it, I guess. It's different than just adding water to powdered graphite, and so it actually it has a different quality to it. But I have some of it. And what typically happens with me is that I'll have it and it'll sit there and I'll pick it up and like play with it every now and then one day I'll pick it up and use it in a piece and see what what the spectrum of
That's why I can never throw anything out.
well, because as soon as I've done this before where I've thrown things out
It's true.
and then had to go back and rebuy them like a week later because that was like a week before I was actually going to start using it.
It's true.
So it's like that whole secret thing they talk about, when they talk about secret martial arts, when actually what they mean is it's just an aspect of it that you haven't studied it enough to realize is even there yet. It's not really secret. It's always in plain sight. It's just
Right.
that you might be at a different,
Oh, wait.
What?
Let's see. Let's see. Do you do finger workouts to strengthen your superior finger dexterity?
I do not, and not as such anyway. I mean, I used to play piano, and I did a lot of that when I was young, but I don't really do such things. But that's funny. There are definitely exercises that people do for to get rid of carpal tunnels and things like that.
Right.
I use so many different kinds of tools though that's not usually an issue with me because I have a different tool I'm playing with most of the time.
Someone wants to see you using your regular pencil.
This is a regular pencil.
No, I think like a number 2.
Oh,
They said a mobile number 2.
Oh yeah. Okay. Next time I'll go in. I don't even know if I have a regular.
They're out.
We have Mogul and we have what are the other ones? Ticonderogas and.
I don't like Ticonderoga. I'm a pencil snob.
I've
They're
done
too
drawings.
hard.
I've done drawings with the free pencils they give you when you go to IKEA to do the little checkbox things on their little shopping list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do one the next time. I'll get a number 2 pencil, whether it's Mogul or Ticonderoga or whatever. Even pencils that have an inconsistent graphite quality to them are still usable. I like Tombow because they're darker than a lot of other pencils. But that being said, you use what you have. The best one is the one in your hand, right?
Clarence says I couldn't draw that fast even if there was a fire under my mouth.
Well, you know what? The funny thing is I never really intended to be able to draw fast. I've never really tried to do that.
You go slower.
You
end up going faster.
Yeah. And in fact, when people used to advise me, they would say, "Well, can you do this faster?" I would get all anti-authority and say, "No, I have to go slower now because you said that." And the strange byproduct of going slower was that eventually, because I got more familiar with my process, I guess, and my technique and more confident, it just started speeding up naturally. So.
Julia the Wizard says, "You ever hear making new animals? And my doodle book is filled with memes and Star Trek shit."
Yeah, well, I mean, I have like, if you're talking about, wasting time, I do a lot of that too. It's just that I tend to waste time doing things that lean towards what I want to do. Memes and Star Trek shit's kind of cool too.
That's true.
But I have a kid who's like a 7th tier meme lord, I guess. And if you're into memes, you know what I mean by tiers and all that. So, and if you're not into memes, it doesn't really matter anyway. It's
Do you use oils in your masterpieces?
Uh, I do like to play. Masterpiece is questionable, but I do like to play. I do use oils quite a bit I go through modes, periods when I'll pick it up and use it a lot more, and then it's really funny because it's almost like a part of me resists working in oil until I do it, because I know once I start doing it, that's all I'm going to do for a few months, and I'm not going to do anything but that. You know, it's like, you know, getting ready to go on a long trip, and you know that as soon as you plan this trip, you're going to be gone for a long time, so you have to be prepared for that. You know, it's so. But
Mood by Randy asks, hello, how do you know once you've developed a personal style? I think I'm influenced by so many artists that I feel like I'm copying their style.
I think because you know your influences, you're more sensitive to the fact that you may be being derivative of someone else's style than other people might be. We were just having we had a conversation about this recently when a Facebook friend was talking about being compared to other artists, and he didn't want to be compared to other people. But the thing is that, you know, there's always going to be a lineage in your work. There's always going to be a place that it comes from and a language that you speak. That it's like, you know, it's like how French has elements of Latin in it. There's always going to be that history that you can look back into, that common language somewhere in the background that you learned to speak from looking at someone else's, you know, work. I'm not sure that that's avoidable unless you learn how to create in a vacuum, in which case you probably, when you do that, I think you tend to end up recreating things that have already been done with other people, and you still end up getting compared. But how do you avoid? Well, you just keep working at it, and looking at doing your own work. Basically, just means keep working on the ideas that you find compelling, and eventually the parts of it where it differs will start to become more and more prevalent. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with people who are, you know, trying to figure out who they are, for their work to go through phases where it looks like someone else's work for a while. That's how you learn how to do things.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
So, if that helps.
And there are some questions in Spanish and in French. Questions or statements. So, and I can't jump over and translate things. We're a two-man show.
So yeah, I mean, sometimes there's people that can translate. But if we don't respond to your question and you're speaking you're typing in a different language, it's not because we want to ignore you. It's just because our educational background has been limited. We only
Sorry, I need a drink. Let's see. Sorry. The most 3D and beautiful detailed graphite pieces on the planet. What inspires you, good sir?
Oh, I thank you very much, by the way. I get inspired by a lot of other people's work, and I also get inspired by elements of nature that I see. Something I look at more than I realized the other day was I actually look at electron microscope stuff quite a bit because of the textures and shapes that you see when you're at that level. It's almost like everything becomes alien when you look at it close enough, right? But I also have around the house, I have different elements of nature just kind of stationed around my studio all the time, and oh yeah, this is this is just some dried leaves that I put in a box with a desiccated mouse, and I have this, if you can see it from the side, you know, and they're almost the same texture, they're almost the same quality, you know, in them, and they're pretty much the same color too, you know. It's just I love looking at all the, it's almost like that patterns that nature makes when it both grows and then decays. They're very similar, and they sort of speak to each other. Like when I look at something in decay, I don't really notice so much. It's not really so much about me about looking at death, but actually having seen the presence of life. You know, plus there's that whole aspect of it where you look at stuff like that, and it's the memento mori, where you're reminded that time is fleeting, which actually that's tempus fugit. But anyway, memento mori is remember death, but
Right.
remember life. One or the other. Remember, memento vitae is remember life. Memento mori is remember death. Tempus fugit is time is fleeting, and all those things are relevant. So.
Mint Chip says, we presented artists in class and I showed your work. My class loved it.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. What kind of was it? What kind of a class was it? It would be funny if it was like a math class, but no. But it must. I mean, as an art class, was it a high school or college art class?
Yeah.
I've been talking a lot recently about doing some class stuff with people coming in and talking about work and things. It'd be interesting to know. But
The question in Spanish was asking, what are you drawing?
oh, an undefined creature, enigmatic creature at this point.
Right.
Which means I don't really know yet. I'm just playing with rhythm and shape, and it's starting to kind of become a vaguely humanoid shape.
Is that a Tombow Mono 6B?
This is a Tombow Mono 6B.
Tombow Mono 100 6B.
Yep, and I have other new things too this week. I can show them. I just started buying these. I got a few of these recently. This is a Faber-Castell flat lead mechanical pencil. It actually uses flat lead, so you can draw with the edge of it and do like almost a calligraphic line. The interesting thing is, this is an antique, and as of yet, I don't have any lead to fit it. But eventually, I will find the lead that will work with this. I also bought one of these, which is these are the very inexpensive AFMAT electric erasers that you can get online. This was maybe $10 after shipping.
That one?
Yeah. And the reason I bought it was because it's AFMAT. The reason I bought it was because it actually uses the 2.3 millimeter erasers. The same ones, the same kind that are in the Tombow Mono, the little one, the Tombow Mono erasers, the click erasers, like this. It uses the same size. It's the smallest size you can get to go on an eraser that I found so far. So this was like a $10 eraser. It uses 2 AAAs. It works really good. It's very quiet. It seems pretty powerful. I don't know what the longevity is for such a thing. Some of these electric erasers don't last very long in terms of real use. The best one I've ever had are the Sakura electric erasers, and it uses the larger eraser fills, but I actually found out that if I took one of my Dremel bits, I can use the 2.3 millimeter erasers in it too, and you just stick the Dremel bit in it, and it works just fine.
Oh,
so this is what I do. I play with the stuff that I have, and if I wanted to do something else, I figure out how to make it do that. So.
They say it was a high school art class.
So
I'm going to college for video game design.
Oh, that's cool. Video game design's cool. Actually, I was currently working on a project, but I had to turn down some video game work just recently. That would have been really fun. It was kind of creature-based stuff like what I normally do. But like I said, I was already committed into another project.
This is a question that pertains to what we had some work doing. When or how did you begin to do commission work, commercial or private?
When did I guess because I started off going to conventions and mailing my work out to conventions. That's one of the first things that started happening, was that I started having people want to commission me to work for, like, contract me for some of the RPGs. Like I actually did RPG stuff for like Steve Jackson games and Car Wars, believe it or not. Something I haven't drawn since then is a car. And so I ended up doing a lot of game stuff. I did some work for TSR, Dragon Magazine, back when it was still a magazine, still in print. Yeah, a print magazine.
Yes.
I did work, for those guys for a while.
Speaking of which, if you guys don't know, Beautiful Bizarre magazine has a article on you this month. In their June issue, issue 25.
Yeah, it's very complimentary, and there's some images in it that are reproduced really well.
Yes.
So if you get a chance to pick up Beautiful Bizarre.
Beautiful Bizarre.
was I working on a question there, or was?
No, we probably kind of finished it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
how did
we
you
were
start
talking
doing
about contract
commissions?
commission work. Well, that happened because I started getting my work, showing my work. Pretty much when you get your work out there, and like make yourself a website and start like posting to forums. Once you get, I guess, to a professional level, people will start asking you if you take commissions. Uh, so just make yourself available for that when you're ready to do it, and you know, and if nobody's commissioning you right away, make up commissions for yourself and do them to a degree that
Yeah.
Like I've always said, if you can't, if you're not working at the moment, like when I'm not working on a contract, I try to do the kind of work that that nobody, first off, would pay me to do, the stuff I want to do for myself. And I'm not saying that nobody would buy it. I'm just saying that it's the stuff that I want to do whether anybody pays me or not.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So, and I try to, do as much of that as I can when I'm not doing when I'm not doing like concept work for film or whatever.
Right.
So
Just your fine art and everything. I guess that is.
I used to do a lot. We were just noticing this. My son's working on fleshing out our website with
Someone said something about the Magic the Gathering card.
Yeah, I did it early on. I did a lot of magic stuff. I did a lot of illustration and stuff for White Wolf and for RPGs and things like that. Even Legend of Five Rings. Pretty much a lot of the major card games I worked on when it was popular.
Right.
So, and then I stopped working on like cards for about 10 years or so, and then went back into it after I had like more time to develop, I guess.
Ah.
Standing up.
Yes, my foot was falling asleep.
Yeah.
Let's see. Alexandru said that was better advice than any university professor has ever given me. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Someone asked if this is a planned drawing.
It is no, there's no plan other than I started with a horizontal piece of paper, and sometimes that will.
And it looks like you got a vertical piece going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but I started twisting the form this way a bit. So I have no idea what it is yet, or if it's going to turn into anything. Sometimes a bit or a piece will turn into something, and I'll end up erasing a great deal of it just to get that one piece isolated to use it. But it's, this paper, it's regular Strathmore 400 series, medium.
Are you using the back side of that? Or is that?
No, this is the front side.
Oh, okay.
The back side's a little smoother. I like the toothy side.
Okay.
You can use either side, though. I mean, if you want a smoother tooth, you go to the back side of the paper. It's all, it all gets, rolled out on a press, so one side is always usually smoother than another.
Oh.
Same thing with watercolor paper. You know how you have one side that usually has more tooth than a watercolor paper?
Yes. Randy asked how we choose the prices for your pieces.
It has come to a kind of a science over the years of trial and error. Like you start off with, looking at what other people that are doing comparable work charge for what they have, and then you try to take into account their visibility and popularity and where you are kind of in that. And basically you can't ignore what you want for the work that you do and what you need to make a living, right? So there's a lot of weird variables, and I end up usually, when she asks me what do I think something is worth, I usually end up saying a low number, and she ends up usually saying something much higher than I do.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yes.
But to be fair, to be fair, her price is usually the one that it sells at, and so because
It's true.
I would be, if I were like independently wealthy, I would probably give a lot of my work away, not because I don't value it, but because I just like the fact I want other people to have it.
That is advice to use that advice with caution.
Yeah.
Don't just give your art
No,
away.
no, you shouldn't just give your art away. I'm just saying that if I lived in a world where I didn't have to pay rent or pay a mortgage and make a living and stuff, that I have in the past given stuff away. Just because there's sometimes, and it has nothing to do with that I devalue my own work or anything like that. It's just that sometimes what I get from giving it away is worth more than the money. So.
That's very good. Oh, Julia says, I have this stupid jealousy of people who can hold their pencils normally. I can hold my pencil with I can only hold a pencil with all my fingers because I have
Like,
a neuromuscular disability.
well, you know what? It, if you can use your hand that way, and then that's the way that you've learned to do it, how somebody holds a pencil is sort of like it's very, very not important at all.
That's true.
You know, you do the thing that makes it so that you can get the work or do the work the way you want it to or you need to, and you know, there's no reason ever to feel
Right.
jealous about that. It's just a difference in you. It's just part of you, and most likely will lead to a different conclusion because it's part of you, right? Uh, so you don't ever, you know, you never have to worry about that. It's like asking, you know, people what is art. Well, I mean, there are if there are 100,000 artists in a room, there's 100,000 different kinds of art, you know.
Yes.
Uh, so you just, you know, you feel good about, you know, the fact that you can do whatever you can do with what you've got
Right.
and how you do it,
Right.
you know.
Mint Chip says, "How did you know what art the art was you wanted to pursue? Which art you wanted? How did the
I went
art you
through,
wanted to
again,
pursue?"
it was a trial and error, right? We
Yes.
went through a lot of
It is
things.
not this. This is not what he started out with
I
30
did
years
no,
ago.
I did not. There's a lot of bugs come in my studio at night. It's cool. I started doing way different. I mean, I did a lot of pinup work when I first started because it seemed like, you know, because, well, first off, I was young and I was into comic books and there was a lot of pinup in comic books. I kind of grew away from that in a different, you know, I went in a different direction. I got kind of, you know, I wanted to keep doing figurative work, but I lost interest in the pinup aspect of it. I wanted to look at the structural aspect of doing figurative work and just the beauty in the form rather than, you know, uh, the the standard type stuff you see in pinup. It became more
Right.
figurative art, and then I did like medieval fantasy for a while. I've actually even done cute stuff before, but I don't really.
Oops, sorry.
I only ever do something that can be qualified as cute when the mood strikes me, which was frustrating because it actually was one of the things that it
Very
sold
well.
very well when I did it, and but that's the danger of like what they call, you know, when you have golden handcuffs, when something sells really well and you get to a point where you've built yourself on that thing and you can't step away from it to develop or become something new because of it. I was lucky that I didn't really have any kind of like. This sounds weird, but I've always told people that I was never cursed by early success, and because it makes it
Being
harder.
there from earlier,
Well,
I can attest to
Well,
that.
because it makes when you have something that you do that becomes astronomically popular right away, you pretty much, if you watch people who that happen to, they almost always end up doing that for the rest of their life. You know what I mean? And they can almost never step out of it because they get tied to the money that they make from it. And I tried to do things in
He's
terms of
finally sharpening after half an hour.
yeah, I've in points tried to do things intentionally to make something for sale. And
doesn't
it
work.
just never works out for me because the monetary aspect of it is not the motivating aspect. I grew up with less with no with money. Really, the reason money wasn't an issue was because we didn't really have it when I was growing up, and so I never really thought to consider it as a motivating factor in a lot of things. I ended up just picking things to do that I wanted to do, and being sort of letting myself become kind of obsessive compulsive about it. I used to have this exact phrase that went, oh, you're going to sneeze. I used to have this, bless you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's gonna happen.
It's a good
again.
sneeze. I had this exact phrase that went through my head when I was in school.
Okay.
I would tell myself that I'm going to be an artist or I'll die trying. And I never really did anything else as a backup for that because that's all I really wanted to do. Now, whether or not I would have let myself, die trying, starve to death, I don't know. Probably not. I'd have probably ended up doing what people do, which is make a living, which you have to do sometimes. And it's not that I haven't drawn or painted to make a living before, because that's what contract work is.
Right.
You do work like that, and you learn how to become a professional so that you can sometimes curb your own desire towards the desire of someone else so that, you can pay your rent. There's nothing wrong with that. You should never, ever be bashful about having to do that at all. That's part of being alive in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't ever let anybody make you feel bad about making a living.
Right.
But what I was talking about was the fact that I didn't have a style early on that people resolved as mine, and it was the only thing I could do, or they wouldn't. Although when
Well,
I
they
did
did,
when I
and
did
then
pinup
they-
when I did pinup work and I stopped doing pinup work, I did lose all of my followers at that time.
Yes.
Back when followers weren't really that much of a big deal, or you didn't really notice them so much because, you know, we didn't have social media and stuff when I started. We didn't have a way of knowing how many people were actually involved in it. I just noticed that at conventions when I stopped doing pinup,
Right.
I had less people stopping by the booth.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But-
All right, we have to say our website, it's 9:30 something. So our website is AllenWilliamsStudio.com. You can find some originals and prints there, which you can purchase, and we'll box them up and send them out to you. This video will be on our live feed for 24 hours if you missed the beginning part. Just after it's done, it'll pop up there in our stories for 24 hours, and then it will go to our Patreon page, which is at patreon.com/AllenWilliams. Is that everything?
You know, right now this sort of looks like almost like a lettuce golem. It looks like there's aspects of it that look like lettuce.
Lettuce.
Actually, I love the look of dried lettuce too because it has that real fleshy look to it. So, I mean, it looks like a head of lettuce.
A little bit.
A little bit.
You're right. I'm using one eyeball now. I'm a little tired.
Vicky went kayaking today. Well, went to a kayaking class. It was pretty
I went to a
cool.
class from 8 until 6.
That's a
8 in the
long
morning
that's a
until
long time to
6.
be on the water, or around the water.
In the sun. It was only 92 degrees today. 92 degrees.
That's 92 in Mississippi degrees, which is like 102 everywhere else.
Oh my God. Yeah, because it was very steamy. It was hot. But it was fun. I had fun.
Good.
So I wouldn't be so tired, except got up
Well, you woke up at 3
3
a.m.
a.m.,
So
which I did not have to do. But for some reason it said, hey. All right, let's see. I have to go way back because all these people have asked questions. Do you get anxious when you started drawing?
yeah, actually, I do this. This is funny because we started saying this recently. When people say, "Does drawing ever frustrate you?" and I say the thing like Banner says, "It's my secret is that I'm always frustrated." Yeah, I always get a bit anxious when I start, just because I go through a period of searching, and the part of it that usually makes me the most anxious is actually the part before I actually get to the paper, when I'm trying to think of when I'm doing something for myself and I'm trying to decide what is it that I want to do, and am I just doing this to recreate something I've already done because it made me feel good, or is there a real reason to do it? Because I do go through a lot of intellectual questioning about what I do before I sit down to start to work sometimes. And then sometimes I'll just get frustrated enough with that I'll just sit down and start like I did today. This wasn't born of frustration, that was a necessity, because when we do live feeds, I always want to work on something.
Right.
So you can, because one of the things I think is very important is, as much as I kind of look at drawing and painting with a romantic eye, I think it needs to be de-romanticized when you start so that you can get into it. You don't, so that people don't have this feeling that it's unattainable. So a lot of times if you see somebody working and struggling through something and they're basically going through the same struggles, that you go through, maybe it'll, motivate you to move again, to move into it, faster or further. One of the things I recently started talking about that it occurred to me was that this whole idea of practice, that it's interesting to me, because what I've realized is that over the years, practicing hasn't really made things easier for me. It's just made it so that I'm used to how hard it is. I think, and that I don't. Yeah, it's the thing is, you practice something, and you start to realize, oh, this is really hard, and then you do it long enough, and you start to forget
that it's really
hard, and then one day it doesn't feel hard anymore because you don't pay attention to that part of it. And I think half the value of practice, if not more than that, is because of that, because it teaches you that, yeah, it's going to be hard, and you're just going to have to sit there and suffer through that middle part that is always the hardest, the fuzzy stage.
Right.
When things don't look right. Because a lot of times a drawing or a painting doesn't look right until the last 5%. And then a little tweak here and there can turn like an average drawing or painting into something better.
Right.
You know, and most of the people that get frustrated with their work tend to stop just before they get to that. They stop too soon. They stop in the fuzzy stage when it doesn't look right.
Don't stop in the fuzzy stage. All right.
So.
Or don't go past the finished stage. Sometimes
well, yeah, but
to do that.
Not going past the finished stage is much harder than I mean, people. It's easy to stop at the fuzzy stage, but it's much harder to discern when you're actually finished with a piece. You know, for me, it's usually at that point when what I'm doing is invisible to everyone else around me except for me, and I go, okay, I'm sitting here picking at the fibers of the paper, smoothing out an area that nobody will notice is smooth, you know, except for me. And sometimes I let myself do that. I'll be self-indulgent because I find that to be very meditative, and it's kind of it's joy-inducing to me, you know. So,
all right,
but
I have more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
What inspires the writings you do? Those stories have had a profound effect on me since I stumbled on your work. Are there any books? Oh shoot! Why did I ask this question?
Vicky is in the process of putting together one of our books.
It was supposed to be March, but that didn't happen.
Well, a lot of stuff is, you know, going on. Things have gotten more expensive, and we have to look for alternate plans now.
Yes.
Because of, you know, certain things that are happening in the world. But the writing, it's very personal, I guess you could say. In a lot of ways, it's my response in a metaphorical way to the things I see happening in the world and feelings that I have about certain things. And in many ways, I feel like I as I'm working on a piece, the piece starts to it starts to suggest a narrative. Is the least magical way of putting it. It starts, you know, it starts to suggest a phrase, or sometimes the words just sort of kind of come together, like self-assemble in my head.
The best ones are that is when I walk in and there's writing beside it. Sometimes I do walk in and I go, I need to have some narrative with this, and you're like,
and then I have to look at it and talk. I have to
talk to it,
look at it and talk to it, and but many times she'll walk in, and as I'm working on something, a phrase will just kind of appear in my brain in a way, and I'll write it down. And then later, as I look at it, I'll start to, like, I've had this happen a few times where I've had to actually I've had to actually research the phrase and find out if it actually relates to what the piece looks like it's talking about. And it universally has always been the case that it has worked out that way.
You got creepy.
Well, it's just I feel like I mean I read a lot when I was young, and I feel like a lot of that reading you know, sunk in. I read at a pretty high level early on, and so I have, I think, an ability to contextually define words that I don't know. Like, there were, like, the word novation. I did a piece where I used the word novation, and it was called the Novation of the Saints, and I had no idea what the word novation meant until I went and looked it up, and come to find out the word novation means a new covenant or a new contract. And so to say the Novation of the Saints is a new contract with the saints, which actually worked very well for the piece. But I didn't know what the word meant until I went and looked it up. You know, I used the phrase hard-struck coins in a piece, and I didn't actually know that was a real phrase until I went and looked up what it meant. And a hard-struck coin is a coin that's been struck so hard, they put the image on the coin, they strike it so hard that it pierces all the way through and renders the coin useless. It makes it a worthless coin. And so in the context of the piece that I was using, the phrase hard-struck coins was perfectly placed for that piece. And you know, I do want there to be a romantic element to the work, and I definitely feel a sort of
you don't think that's romantic?
No, I do. That's what I'm saying, though.
Because I'm like living with you, and it's like
what
what
I'm saying is that, you know, I want people to be able to understand that you can draw, and that there's no magic to learning how to draw, but there's magic in what you draw. Sometimes there's magic in how you put it together.
That's good.
You know, that is something.
Write that down. I can't go back and listen to this. Well, I mean, I can, and I will. Say that again.
Huh?
There's
well,
no
I mean,
magic
you can empirically, academically, you can learn how to draw. The magic, though, that I see when I see it in other people's work is what you draw and how you make that, how you put it together.
How you put it
You
all
know,
together
you can
is what
teach
makes it
somebody how to
magic.
draw photorealistically, but you can't teach them how to make a meaningful drawing, right? That's something that has to come from the inside, and that's something that's a part that actually to me feels like more like alchemy or magic,
All right.
you know.
Ooh,
So
we're getting way out there this time.
sorry, you know.
That's right.
And when I say, you know, that, take it with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe in magic to do any of this stuff. You don't have to believe that we drink from a common creative well somewhere. But I think that in a lot of ways we do, because I've had a lot of ideas that I didn't capitalize on that I then saw a year later in somebody else's.
Or 4 years later,
Yeah.
like, oh, we
Yeah.
talked about it.
I feel like,
remember talking
you know, I feel like there's a lot of, you know, things that inspire many of us out there, and that you know, if it's a good idea, it'll eventually come out, whether it's with you or with somebody else.
There's a whole bunch of good. I am moving a little slow tonight because I'm so tired.
Yeah, that's okay.
Did you never experience resistance from inside and outside?
I always experience resistance. That's
I knew you would love this question.
no. The thing about resistance is that it doesn't ever go away. It's just that whole practice thing teaches you to learn how to ignore the pain of the resistance, right? It teaches you to get over it and keep going. There are definitely times when I have to mentally slap myself and go say, sit down and work. You know, I mean, sometimes I'd rather go outside and play volleyball with my kids, and I do. But there are other times when I have to sit down and finish something. And, you know, resistance, you have to think of that as an ever-present adversary that is only there to make you better, right? Because that's what it is. It is the obstacle that is only there to make you stronger. Because that's what resistance is.
Right.
So, at least that's the way I look at it. You know, when I say you have to, nobody has to do anything. These are all my suggestions.
Sure.
Based on, you know, the stuff that I do.
They probably get that.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, I would never tell somebody the way they approach art is invalid, because, you know, if you can do your own artwork and sell it, and I don't think it's valid, it really makes no difference whatsoever.
Right.
You know?
You have to just blow them off.
Right.
Sedation 6. Did you ever launch the campaign for your book with your art and some of the lore? I'm getting there.
That's exactly what
I wear many hats. I wear many hats.
So one of the things that happens that gets in the way sometimes is, and I won't say that it's not a pleasant thing to have happen, is I get pulled into like a concept art project. So I've been kind of more vacant, more absent lately online, because I'm right now I'm knee deep into a project that is extraordinarily NDA. But yeah, that stuff can sometimes, you know, get in the way a bit, you know, of the personal stuff that's going on.
Sure. That and I have to do the book.
Well, yeah, you have to, you know, we do have a book set up. We have a lot of artwork that's ready for it, and a lot of narrative to go with it. But, you know, those are just like the foundational things, and that's one of those things that, you know, we have to clear out a little bit of time to make happen.
Right. Yeah.
Especially if we want it to look good.
It has to look good.
Every time I start to mention that I'm doing something NDA, Vicky starts poking me because she's afraid I'm going to tell everybody what I'm doing, and I'm not going to do that. She was jabbing me just a minute ago. So.
Do you play video games for inspiration?
I like video games. I don't play a lot because I'm an addictive personality, and if I start to play a lot, I'll get like way. Okay, so for like over Christmas, I played like something like 120 hours of Borderlands. So you know, it's just something I like to. I actually love to look at video game art as well. I just don't let myself get too involved in playing them because I can lose so much time doing that.
Yes.
Just because I love being invested in the story. So much so that what I typically do, will start playing the video game and I'll get to a point where I want to know the story but don't have the time to play the game, so I'll go and find the cheat codes.
This has happened for, I don't know, 15 years or something. How do you compensate for the lack of darkness that graphite can provide compared to charcoal or ink? You don't use charcoal or ink.
Well,
so
I mean, I've used ink before.
Right.
Charcoal, I don't feel an affinity for as much as the graphite. And if I want something to be dark, I've figured out ways to make it do that with a little bit of mixed media. Like if I want this to go really, really dark, I could seal it with a matte medium, and then I would go back and start to play with just a very like tickling the dark areas with like a black acrylic gouache, and I could make it turn into like a black velvet painting if I wanted to. That's something I developed kind of over a long period of time to do that exact thing. I don't find it as much of, I use relative dark, so so whether or not it's black doesn't usually make as much difference as whether or not it's relative black. And especially with graphite, I don't go for solid smooth black. I go for like a photo, like a black filled with a little bit of noise, because the noise makes it unify and keeps it a little more interesting than perfectly smooth. Graphite that's perfectly like glass smooth is to me, it doesn't interest me as much as graphite that looks like you're, seeing the textures through it, or looking through it like even a dirty window or something like that. But I don't typically do a lot of photoreal drawing. I mean, I have done it in the past. It's just that's just not where my particular penchant leads me.
Your drawings look like the creatures I see during sleep paralysis.
Oh, that's I want to say that that's kind of cool, but I know it's kind of terrifying for people who have it. I had probably the first bout I've ever had of sleep paralysis a few weeks ago. I'm 53 years old, and it's the first time it had ever happened to me. I woke up, I was laying on my stomach, and I was staring at the hairs on my arm, but I couldn't move. I went in and out of like actual sleep 2 or 3 times with that happening. And then finally, at the last time it happened, I was able to raise up. I didn't see anything. I didn't continue. I didn't have any of that happen. But it was, for a moment, it was like, until I realized what was going on, it was panic-inducing for a brief moment. It was like, waking up paralyzed.
Yeah.
But then I kind of caught on to what was going on. In my family, historically, we have the opposite of sleep paralysis. I have not sleepwalking, but there's a tendency in my family when people get older to start moving and doing things in their sleep that you don't want. Like my dad was in danger of punching my mother one night because he was in a dream fight with someone, and he started swinging in his sleep. And it's just something, I have done that once when I was younger, where I thought I was fighting a creature in my dream, and I ended up waking up having like clawed my mother with my fingernails, because and I was a little kid. So it goes the other direction too, Sleep paralysis is that, for people who aren't in the know, if you have it, you already know. There's a chemical in your brain that's released to keep you from moving and jumping up and running around in your dreams. And so for some people it misfires a little bit, and they have a little bit too much of it on waking up. Yeah. And that can also be weird, because you also have that, there's a certain kind of, I forget what it's called, but there's a certain kind of hallucination that happens that accompanies it, and there's a name for it. And I had one of those the other night when I woke up and I saw the shape from my dream was still in front of me, and then it slowly dissipated. And go ahead.
Ugly Face Art asks, do you worry about carpal tunnel or arthritis in your hands? And if so, do you do stretches or physical care type exercises for your hands?
I don't worry about it so much as because I don't really, I don't get it that much. I think when I was younger, there was a period when I would start to get numbness in my hands from leaning on my desk so much. But I work with so many different size tools and things, and if you notice, I always have an eraser in my hand, even when I'm just walking around the house, and I'm constantly doing this with my eraser, all the time. I feel like I'm probably exercising it out. If I were to have the tendency, I think I'd probably compensate for it with that.
Yes.
So.
Brander Boy, how did you learn to do the liquid graphite wash thing? How can I learn? I don't even know what it's called.
Okay.
You can look on our Patreon.
If you go to our Patreon or any of our videos or YouTube things, it's just, what I do is, it's real simple. It's graphite water. It's graphite powder, and I use a brush that I get wet with water, dip it in the graphite powder, and I start scrubbing texture on a piece of clay board.
There's a bunch of videos about it.
Yeah. and uh, it's not an easy technique. I will tell you that. So don't start it if you're going to start it. Don't start it thinking it's going to, it's going to do what you want
Magically
right
appear.
away. Yeah, because people who are experienced artists find it difficult to work with, and it's just how did I do it? I just sort of started playing with it one day, and I went out the first person to ever do graphite wash. There are tons of people who've used graphite wash before, but in different ways. A lot of people treat it, as just a singular, like a painting technique, and other people have done it in, on smaller scale. I think sometimes they would use graphite powder and brush to do a lot of botanical illustration and insect illustrations for, that kind of thing. And I just sort of picked it up and saw a way to adapt it to the kind of imagery that I like to play with, because there's a lot of randomness and textural chaos in that, and
Right.
that I could bring things out of that.
Yes.
So
Do you think psychedelics would help resolve an art block or help create a helping creative output?
I have never done a psychedelic. I have friends who have, and I would, they seem to.
We have no idea, right?
I don't have any idea about it. I've read about it. It's always been an interesting subject to me. But my friends who have done such things have said in the past that it made them feel they felt more in touch with their own creative powers afterwards, because I guess because part of that is part of the psychedelic allows you to think things into being. That's
Yeah.
so I don't know. Anytime anybody, I mean, obviously, if you're an
You like-
adult, you have to research this fully for yourself.
Yeah. You
But
like control better.
I don't, the times that I've gotten like, out of control with like either alcohol or, whatever, I don't enjoy not being fully aware. And I know that there's some things though that people have taken in terms of meditational things that you don't lose that kind of control of your, self. And I don't know how to answer it other than saying that I've never done it, but the people that I know that have done it seem to want to swear by it. So all I would say was just
Research.
and be careful.
Yes.
So
It is almost time to be done. We have about 5 minutes or so. Our website is Allen Williams Studio. We're not running off yet or anything, but just for me to do my. I've been quiet, so I'll do my thing. Our website is AllenWilliamsStudio.com. This video will be up on Instagram under the stories for 24 hours if you have not been, if you didn't get to catch the beginning. He's working on Strathmore 400 weight medium, 400 series medium weight drawing paper.
Right.
With a Tombow Mono 106B pencil.
right.
And, what else? After Instagram, it'll be up under our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/Allen Williams. Oh, in July, you have 2 pieces that are down in Australia.
Oh yeah, for the
Someone said hello from Kangaroo Island in
oh
Australia.
cool, that's cool.
So you have 2 pieces at the Be an Art Gallery.
Oh, that just reminds me. I just recently saw these kangaroo taxidermy shapes that they have.
Yes.
That I love, and I want to get one, but I don't even know where to get one.
The kangaroo taxidermy.
They're taxidermy shapes that people use to mount for kangaroo dioramas.
People in Australia.
I know, it's just I haven't thought to ask them yet, but they're just like, I love them. I love the taxidermy shapes because they almost look like little mummified animals.
But they go inside the skin.
Yeah, but I wouldn't put any skin on them. I would just keep them as the little
like
mummified
the
animal. So
anyway, 2 of his pieces will be at Be an Art Gallery, and wait, there was more in July. There's one will be in their June show, the Small Work show, and the next one will be in the July show, which is the Dark Art show. July 9th. July. is when the Pan's Labyrinth illustrated novel comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And you did some interior work for that
Mm-hmm.
quite a while ago.
Yep.
And let's see, what else is coming up? Dragon Con.
Also keep an eye out for the release of
Other Beautiful Bazaar.
Beautiful Bazaar, the magazine, which is like now, right?
It's on,
And-
because yes, it came out today, I believe. It's
And
June 1st.
Carnival Row should be coming out soon. There's a
so.
film, a series on
Amazon.
Amazon called Carnival Row that I did some work on too. So that should be coming out.
Motivational advice. Someone else.
Motivational advice. Just that it's, to me, it's a very meditational thing to sit and draw, and that you don't have to do it a lot. You just have to do it frequently. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours drawing, just a few minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You learn how to just take small bites and do it frequently, and you end up with a lot of information over the period, of time.
I say thank you very much. Thank you for going live.
Oh yeah, I'm glad it's been a while. It's been a few weeks since we did a live thing.
Yeah,
We'll be more
the end of the school year.
Yeah, we'll be more consistent probably from this time out, unless I get like snagged on a deadline with this other project.
That is incredible to see you do so much amazing work so naturally.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for answering questions and drawing live.
Anytime. Or specifically Saturday nights at 9.
Yes. Well, we tried to do Tuesday, but
Yeah.
I think the kids were, I don't know, there was just, now that they're out of school, we still have to get work done.
Yeah.
Your videos always help inspire me to keep making art and keep moving forward.
Oh yeah. Just thank you very much. That's hopefully, hopefully we are some benefit,
Yes. I kind of like how that guy turned out.
I do too so far. I almost feel like this is like the character looks like he's underwater. Probably because of all this.
The movement.
Yeah.
I'm so tired.
Are you?
Yes.
Well, you got up at 3 and then went kayaking all day.
I got a little sun.
And when I say 3, I mean 3 a.m. Oh, look,
3
this bug.
a.m. I know. He flew at my eyeball.
I get bugs in here all night, though. It's fun.
You like the bugs in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a cool thing when I remember I had the praying mantis on my desk when I walked in that time.
Yes.
That was cool.
How about the one time with the baby praying mantises?
Oh, that was weird. That was in the attic.
That was in the attic in Ohio.
Yeah, there was like 100 baby praying mantises all over my desk when I went in upstairs to work.
That was cool.
It was.
And you can't legally kill them.
Well, I would never.
Not that you would, but I'm just telling you.
I'm a bug relocator.
Yes. Everyone in the house is.
Yeah.
They get distraught when I squish them.
Well,
I would never just squish
you have a hate on for cockroaches, so.
They are cockroaches.
Yeah.
Don't worry, there's more. Do you make underdrawings in your oils for your oil sketches?
Sometimes. Sometimes I make, sometimes they look this elaborate, sometimes they're just outlines. So I feel like the times when I just do outlines, it leaves a lot more room for me to discover it in the paint than when I do it like this. Because if it's fully rendered out, I tend to get restricted and bound up in trying to reproduce every little thing that I've already done. Whereas if I just, like if I took this now and wanted to paint it, I would probably take it, scan it in, I would do an outline of it and then print out the outline and redraw it. And
Right.
and not redraw every value in it. I would leave room for myself to figure out the new shapes and new forms within the context of this particular idea.
All right. All right, we're going to wrap it up, guys. And thank you for coming this week. Sorry we've been off for a couple weeks. We'll be back.
Yeah.
We will be around. And you guys have a fun week.
Yep.
Beginning of June, June 1st.
Thanks for showing up.
Yes, we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye. I'm being attacked by
The
the
bugs.
bugs. They're coming at my head.